Welcome, everybody, to One Stage at a Time, the podcast where we're playing through video games one stage at a time, not skipping a single level. Right now, we are in the still beginning of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, but we have moved into the Marble Gallery. Yeah, Alucard has now stepped through the entrance, through the Alchemy Lab, and we are in the Marble Gallery. I am Aaron Neeson. I'm joined by Andy Prim. Hello, Andy.
I tell you what, brother, I am worn out from all this walking.
No shit. And we are joined by Sam Ingersoll. Hello, Sam.
Hello, hello.
Gentlemen, let's talk about Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Well, first of all, we should acknowledge the music of this stage by our friend Michiru Yamane, and this is a track appropriately titled Marble Gallery. But this one is an earworm. This is one that I find myself humming a lot when I think about Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Maybe it's just because this is sort of a nexus area. We'll pass through it many times on our way to other areas, so we'll be hearing this theme a lot. But I think it's a banger. It's like I said, one of the standout ones from the game.
It struck me when the music first shifted from the Alchemy Lab to this music. I was like, holy shit, we're in a Mega Man level. This is some real video game music shit right now. It felt like it was still appropriate, still like a gothic-y sort of sound and all that, but it felt like a stark contrast from the previous area for me.
Yeah, for sure.
This is the song that I think of when I think of this game. Because Andy points out, it's a good point. There's a specific place in this area that you return to many, many times throughout the entire game, and so you hear this version of this song, I should say, many, many times. So like that, it's very mysterious and extremely 90s video gamey at the same time. You know, it's got the ba 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 ba. That part's real hell yeah, Mega Man. But then got the you know, it's very mysterious.
The harpsichord sounding thing in there.
Yeah. I'm in a castle fighting Draculas.
We're fighting something. We were fighting some weird things in this area. We'll get to that.
Yeah, we're starting to dip our toe into the weirdness of the enemy pool in this area, I would say.
We're getting into the hentai inspired part of the game.
Well, it's like, you know, it's like I would say the Stephen King-esque, you know, like the joke from Family Guy. It's like, well, what's your next book, Mr. King? It's like, it's about a haunted lamp. Ooh, and he shakes the lamp on the desk.
We do fight a literal haunted lamp in this area.
Yes, a Ouija, I think is what they're called.
Yeah, the Ouija table. I guess it's not just a lamp. It's like a table and a chair, and they're all floating around trying to kill you.
And a chair and a little sippy cup all coming at you.
What did you think of that, Aaron, when that popped up and started attacking you? Did you have any thoughts about that exactly?
I was like, oh, that's cute, and then I was like, ow, that's annoying. Ow, oh, I gotta duck and hit it. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, I can't remember if it was the first one, but there's a table at some point that comes at you on the stairs, and that's real annoying. Oh my god, this is the first level or the first area that the fact that you're stunned when you get hit really started to annoy me. That you go flying back 8 feet when you get hit. But yeah, no, I thought that it was a cute little enemy, cute little possessed table.
Yeah, they're not strong by any stretch of the imagination, but it's like you know, a detail. It's like I don't know, aesthetic, background, like wallpaper almost. You know, it just adds flair to the game. There's a lot of stuff like that totally pointless, doesn't add much from a gameplay perspective, but it just, I don't know, it pulls you in a little bit. You know, it adds to the atmosphere.
Atmosphere is the right word, I think. There, you know, they could have just put another Skelly Man. But they decided to kind of fuck with you a little bit and be like, nope, it's a table. Didn't expect that one, did you?
It's a table. Be our guest, and you're like, oh shit.
There's a lot of interesting things like that in this game that I'm not expecting a specific answer from you, Aaron. But as someone who's not played it, I wouldn't say I'm jaded, but I know they're there, and it's just another thing to kill and run past for me. So I'm curious to get your first time experience with some of the well-known enemies and stuff in the game.
I'm still laughing about Aaron's "Be Our Guest" joke. Just picturing all these things like, Alucard, we proudly present tonight's dinner.
Yeah.
Yep. Except instead of France, it's Wallachia.
Wallachia.
Can Jerry Orbach, could he do a Wallachian accent? He probably could.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, he's dead as shit now.
He's dead now,
but he could be a vampire, so it would be perfect.
Dude, honestly, now I'm just wishing there was a Jerry Orbach vampire movie. Can you imagine how good that would be?
I find it hard to believe there's not. He was in so much shit. Now we got to look that up.
Yeah. Dude, honestly, yeah. Like if you watch like the Frank Langella Dracula, I'm picturing like a lot like that, like a really charismatic and sexy Dracula. But with more of like the Jerry Orbach flair.
When I think Jerry Orbach, I think sexy.
Dude, exactly.
Sexy, bite my neck, Jerry.
I know you do, man. All right. Well, okay. Let's see. Set the stage a little bit for the listeners at home. We're in the Marble Gallery. We've just finished the Alchemy Lab. We just defeated Slogra and Gaibon, the first real boss of this game. Marble Gallery, like we said, is a Nexus area. There's no boss in this area. Well, there's sort of a boss, but we'll talk about that much later in a future episode. But for our purposes right now, there's no boss. We're just walking. In fact, the first door we come into, we enter a very long hallway, although not the longest hallway in this area. And it's immediately apparent why it's called the Marble Gallery. It's a long room, a gallery with lots of like marble carvings and carvings of other types along the wall. Very decorative. Like you can imagine some rich guy that owned a huge castle like this, just showing off all of his sculptures in a big long gallery like this.
The aesthetic definitely matches the name a little better than the Alchemy Lab did.
Yeah, exactly. Because as we established, the Alchemy Lab was not an alchemy lab. It was like basically just a museum for like a bunch of sculptures and shit.
Yeah.
Which this is too, but it's not called Alchemy Lab, so it makes more sense. But this is an interesting area because there's like long stretches of it that you don't really need to go to. Like you can just pretty much go left to right and do a bunch of walking and get to the end that way. But there's a lot of other areas that like we either can't get to yet or we don't have to go to at all. So for example, if you just keep going, so you get to this big room where there's like a big hole in the floor and you have to fall in the hole, but then you can come back up some stairs on the right-hand side and get out of it, or you can keep going deeper if you want to. And it goes much deeper. And like you're supposed to go right, and that takes you to the clock room, which we can talk about. But if you choose to go down, you go through this really, really, really long detour through this huge vertical area with all these stained glass windows. And then you get down into this.
I like the stained glass windows are really, really cool looking. They're a little copy pasted, but they're a nice touch.
Well, they reversed them there, so it's not copy paste exactly same. It's a little different.
Yeah, they flipped the sprite. Just like in Mario, when to make Mario's run animation, or the Goombas walk animation, they just flipped it back and forth. Just the same sprite.
I was trying to really like decipher what was going on in them. Like just those, it seems like they're just flowy golden colors and stuff, but the ones down below look like they might have some form.
That's a woman.
Is it?
The small one's a woman. If you go back up with her hair like going down her entire body.
She's like looking down. Face. I see it now. Okay.
Maybe it's his wife who died.
Maybe. And then down there, obviously you got your angel. And then
you're like an
you've got like people looking up at other angelic or maybe
cherubs
demonic
or something.
Oh yeah. There you go.
They're little
babies.
Like cherub babies.
They're cherub babies, of course.
Maybe it's the stereotypical Dracula's mockery of the church. Mm-hmm. Kind of let me put some real church shit in here because I'm an edgelord.
Yeah, he's got a lot of like religious iconography for an explicitly devilish guy.
Yeah.
Just like explicitly like an apostate and like an enemy of the church.
And just to go really out there with like completely baseless fan theorying, it could be almost since, like we kind of think of this the Castlevania itself is like a living thing. You know, it moves around. It's not kind of solid. It almost seems like areas are fused together. Maybe he ate a church at some point. Like the whole castle absorbed a church, kind of like maybe it's like a building version of Alucard from Helsing, where in that comic. Every person that it's Dracula, but he's like been captured by Van Helsing and works for her. It's a woman in the comic, but the cool thing about him is every person he's ever drank their blood from, he's eaten their soul. So like he can like summon them as a familiar, but he's super old. So there's this part at the end, spoiler, if for a really old comic you probably never will ever read.
But you should.
He's fighting an army of the Pope, werewolf Nazis, and then he summons up like armies of people that he's killed over thousands of years, like Mongols and Crusaders and all this stuff. So maybe Castlevania eats buildings in that sense. So this is just a church that it's absorbed and now is like part of the DNA of Castlevania.
That makes sense to me. I totally buy into that. And also,
I like it.
You're making me want to reread Helsing.
Yeah, I do too now.
I had like kind of forgotten about all that shit, but that's so cool.
It's so wacky.
Yeah, man.
It's wackadoo at the end.
All of the like enemies that he's defeated over the course of the entire manga, he's like bringing them back because he now like has captured their souls and is just releasing them on his enemies.
It's a pretty badass like horror manga.
I remember reading some of it. I think, Andy, you loaned it to me. And
I probably did. I had all of it.
It might have been you.
When we all lived together, yeah.
One of you guys loaned it to me, and I read a bunch of it. And, like, I remember all of these elements that you're talking about. But, like, I don't remember anything, like, specifically. I remember Alucard getting shot a fuck ton.
Yeah.
I'm fine, whatever. And just, like, that's really... I don't remember anything else, though.
When you get to the point that there's Nazi werewolves, like Third Reich, we're still around because we're werewolves.
Yeah, I remember them in their blimps,
maybe the story doesn't matter too
Zeppelins?
much. Oh yeah, because it's like it's not quite. It's like I don't know when it takes place, but it's not modern times. I don't think, is it? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's near modern because they have guns and tanks and shit. It's just like they don't have cell
modern
phones.
enough that there's an SR-71 spy plane. Because I remember it crashes into a aircraft carrier and sets on fire, and it becomes like a burning crucifix motif.
Amazing.
So it's 60s, 50s, maybe at least.
At least, yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, as much as I would love to just talk about Helsing and just like in this podcast now forever and then just go read Helsing. But instead, we're going to continue the podcast because we owe it to our listeners.
Last little tidbit. I keep getting annoyed whenever I'm trying to look up anything about this game or specifically Alucard. Fucking Helsing keeps on like preempting whatever I'm trying to find out.
You cannot really Google search Alucard. You have to do the whole Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. Which is kind of a shame because as much as I like that Alucard, this is the definitive Alucard for me.
Like, yeah. Well, because no, we're not. You know what? No, you're right. And we'll just talk about the game instead. Yes, you are right. This is the Alucard for sure.
All right. Well, and maybe Sam, you and I can discuss that on a secret premium episode and charge our listeners $10 if they want to hear that. Yeah, on our OnlyFans. But I was curious, fellas, did you go this way down this really long vertical area with all these stained glass windows?
I did. I went far enough to open a shortcut back to the entrance.
Okay, so if you go even further out of the stained glass window area, you end up in this really weird like area that I'm not sure what kind of architecture this is. Like it seems kind of like Eastern or like Middle Eastern, but then there's all these like suits of armor. And so I'm really not sure. I'm sure this is a reference to some real school of architecture, but I don't know jack shit about that, so I can only speculate. But it's definitely interesting. It's like this blood red color and all these kind of unsettling statues. And then it's also full of literal Cthulhu monsters. We meet Great Cthulhu himself in this area and battle him to the death.
That's who that is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's Cthulhu.
Okay.
Yeah, he, of course, doesn't. This may be like a mistranslation thing. I'm not sure. Like, because he doesn't look a thing like the actual literal Cthulhu, which is traditionally has like a squid beard, like tentacle beard type thing, and is also much bigger than this. But this guy is just kind of like a demon looking guy. He's got wings. He's got really big arms with talons. He's got horns. And he's not that threatening, really. He kind of flaps around, and then he'll like shoot these big balls that are easy to duck under. But if you have the holy water, you can completely wreck him. The holy water is so good in this area, and for most of the game, really, but especially this area.
And I did switch to the holy water in this area. Specifically because I remembered, I couldn't remember exactly what was down here, but I remember it was big and annoying. So I knew I didn't want the axe anymore.
Yeah.
This guy has a very similar move set to, the boss, the flying boss.
Gaibon?
What's his name?
I
forgot his name.
The guy we just fought?
Yeah. He has similar fireball attacks and kind of hops around. But if you have the good aim and the holy water, you can just make him sit on his own death, basically.
Aaron, did you encounter and defeat Cthulhu?
Yes. So I went through. First, I just kept going the main path, like the obvious path. I followed that, and then I got to the end after beating up the hot tail ladies and Audrey too. I got to the end of that path, and I'm like, oh, this is the next area. I bet there's a bunch of stuff to explore down below. So I went back, and there was a ton of stuff the new enemies, the mannequin ladies who I never saw. I was like, whoa, that was kind of freaky. And then coming down here with that big old knight with the mace or the ball and chain.
Yeah.
And then Cthulhu, and I died at Cthulhu. And I was like, shit. Yeah, I died the first time. He kind of kicked my ass. But that was when I was like, okay, well, it's got to be a way. This can't be like a wall already. So I went into my inventory to see if there's another thing I could find. I found the Basilard. I had the Basilard all along.
He had it all along.
I had it all along. So I switched to that, and I started just wrecking shit. And I was like, oh my God, this thing's so much better than the sword.
It's so
I was
good.
Kicking ass. And I got down to him, and I used the book, the holy book, as a shield.
That's a good one too, yeah.
I used that guy,
Bible.
and I just stabbed him over and over, and I kicked his ass, and I was like, oh, well, that was a lot easier. So yes, eventually I did go down there after going the main route first.
Well, I admire your stick-to-itiveness. You were not discouraged or deterred despite a setback. You returned to shove it in Cthulhu's face. So good for you.
I didn't die, but I definitely I think I actually literally got to 1 HP on the way back. And I totally, like, you know how you think something's a certain way, and then you do it, and you're like, wow, this is actually completely different. I had forgotten you have to equip items to use them. You cannot use item. There's no item inventory.
Dude, that's
I had
weird.
to like, yeah, I had to equip the turkey dinner or whatever, and to throw it on the ground to walk over it to use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which was really kind of strange.
I had to use a potion in the same way. Like I equip it. Yeah. It's like, okay, do I want to drop? I'll just replace my shield for a second and use it, and then go right back into the inventory. Put my shield back.
Yeah,
there.
Exactly.
That aspect of the game is so weird and throws me every time I play this game. It just feels like you should be able to use items from the menu.
Yeah, it's a little too clunky. I sort of get it, I guess, though. Like it's more realistic technically. You're not like Link where you're flying through the air and you eat a whole 8 chickens.
Yeah.
And then,
honestly, it was probably because it was easier, because they already had the game set up to go in and put items on through your inventory that way. And they already had it coded to use items that showed up in the world, just walking over them. So they'd have to code an entire menu system to go through and select an item and use it. But honestly, I thought, I swear to God, there was an item menu and you could do that. But I think what it really was is that I never used items. Mm-hmm. When I never really used them. So in my mind, I'm just merging what I expect it to be with the equipment menu, where that's where everything is. Mm-hmm. Like I never used neutron bombs or anything like that really back in the day. It was all just equipment. So I think that's maybe what happened.
Yeah, very possible. And definitely in future games, in the series, you just use items from the menu, and that's that. And then I think in the Sega Saturn version of this game, there is a third hand, like a third equipment slot that is just for using items, and there's a dedicated button for just using items that way. So you don't have to give up a weapon or a shield slot at least. But it's a very strange and clunky system.
We have so many buttons. Use the button.
Use the buttons.
Damn it. Like the two trigger buttons, the bottom trigger buttons, they don't do any of the shoulder buttons do anything in this game?
Yeah, no. Well, yes, transformations.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
Which we haven't gotten any yet, but they do that. And I was trying to think, because I know the controller for PS1 underwent some revisions. They added on the 2 sticks, but it always had 4 shoulder buttons, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's weird that they just wouldn't use those, but far be it from me to question the brilliant minds at Konami.
From like 20 years.
Hindsight's also 20. Hindsight's 20.
And they learned their own. They changed it. As we just said. So they were figuring it out. It's a transition period for a lot of gaming.
That's true. Yeah, this was kind of an experimental game. I wanted to mention one thing. After we get through this huge long room with all the Cthulhus, you get to the end, and it leads back to the entrance, and you can open up a shortcut in the entrance area that you wouldn't be able to access this door from the other side. But once you go through it, you can hit a switch that allows you to access the door, and it also lets you access a previously inaccessible room in the entrance that has a life up in it. If you choose to do so. Yeah, it's kind of weird to get because the room I don't have a map of it, so I'm just going to describe it for you guys. But the room you get back to in the entrance, you're it's a large room and you're up at the top right part of it. And the shortcut you open up involves dropping a rock so that you can now access the area that you just came out of. But then you also, because there's a drop off there, like a cliff sort of, there's a room directly underneath you. So you can jump off and then hang back to the right and get into that room. And then there's a life up there.
Well, I'll have to do that next time.
I'll have to go back for that also.
That's how you do it. You can also come back later when you have more verticality and just access it from below. But I think you can get it from the top that way as well.
God, I cannot wait for more verticality. I am so sick of seeing things that I cannot get to. It's already happened so many times. Like in that fucking clock room, that statue keeps moving and mocking me.
It taunts you.
There's many. That's a big part of this game. It's secret and not so secret doors and pathways that are inaccessible until you get certain items. And it's kind of that way in Super Metroid too, as well, right? Where you I can't get through this door because I got the freeze cannon or the missiles or whatever. It's that's this game's version of that, basically.
Sure.
But it's kind of weird. It's a little weird in this game because it's not that's the thing. It's that's weird. I can't get up there. Why can't I get up there? There's a specific point where I forgot which area it was in. Where you're going up some stairs, but there's a ledge that you can't quite jump onto. No matter how hard you try, jumping to the right.
I wasted a little bit of time there.
Yeah, so like you were saying, Sam, it forces you to pay attention. You have to make a mental note of landmarks that you see, like the big clock room, and barriers, we've played enough video games that we can conclude that we're going to get more verticality at some point. And then in the Metroid series, it's the different doors, like you said, the red doors, the yellow doors. So you're you could draw with a pen and paper, but you're also the main skill they're trying to teach you is just making a mental map and remembering where all these things are at, because you're going to have to come back later. And I think this game does a pretty good job at first of doing that, not so much later on, but at this point, even so far, we're in the entrance, we see that there's a door we can't get to, and we go through the alchemy lab, we get to the marble gallery, and now we can access that door from the other end. So it's teaching us that there's going to be shortcuts and looping around paths. And then the clock room is the best example of this, because there are no less than 4 exits from the clock room, and they all open up in different ways. And anyway, we're going to have to come back here a lot. So the game is telling us, you better remember. we're not going to hold your hand. You just better remember.
So the clock room, for people who are just listening, you go through you're going through the marble gallery, and you're going down the long hallway. You go up, you go right, and you're in like a room with a bunch of grandfather clocks. And one of the most iconic, annoying enemies in the game, the flea bags or flea something.
Flea man.
Flea mans. Those are very iconic Castlevania bad guys, and they're super annoying.
Yeah.
They're little tiny men that have like weird jumpy patterns, and they just run into you all the time. And they're one of the reasons why I now have the clock. I switched over to the timepiece.
Yeah. The stopwatch.
Stopwatch. It uses a shitload of your hearts, but it just stops time for like 6 seconds, 5 seconds.
Something like that.
I've done my time in this game, okay? So I'm going to make it easy. I'm not going to fuck around. I did my
time in Castlevania, 12 years of it!
Especially fighting. I mean, I can do it, but like fighting these guys with the Basilard, it's tiny man versus tiny weapon.
Sword? Knife?
Yeah. But you get through there, and then you get to the center, almost what I consider like the center of the castle.
Yeah.
And even if that's not true, in my mind, that's kind of what it is.
It's pretty much the direct middle of the game. Like, I'm not sure if I have a map of the whole game ready to go, but yeah, it is pretty much like dead center in the map.
But it's a ginormous stone clock with big menacing spear-like hands and a goat's head in the middle. And it's like you go in, it's quiet, and you just hear like tick-tock, tick. I think you just hear like a
yeah, the music stops. You just hear the ticking of the clock. And also, we meet a friend.
We do. An old friend from Rondo of Blood.
An old
who's
friend
all
for us.
Sexily grown up now.
Oh, yeah. And how? Oh, wait, no. She's 17. We're not allowed to talk about that.
She's 17, but she has the voice of a 42-year-old woman. Like,
hey,
which is not a bad
Alucard.
thing. Not a bad thing, but I was just like, that voice does not match her age.
She's got the Dr. Girlfriend voice.
No,
you didn't get it.
No, not even. Just
she's got
go ahead.
Some great lines too, which you missed out on, Andy, probably.
Yeah, I looked them up later.
What do you hear? I
what
think
do
was the
you
line.
hear?
It was the line that I remembered.
Yeah, that threw me for it. I was like, "What? Why talk this you?"
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you hear?
What do you? What you say?
She's like, "Who are you?" And he says, "Alucard." And like, "Not a talkative one, I see."
Yeah.
Oh, and just for people who don't understand, like that's not like, "What do you hear?" Like, do you hear something?
Oh, yeah.
No, it's like she's asking, "What are you doing here?"
Yeah.
What do you hear?
Yeah, and I think it's supposed to be like an old fashioned like Shakespearean kind of thing. Yeah. But it just comes off really weird.
Yeah.
Because it's like she speaks normally except that line. Some guy was like, "Ooh, yeah, I'm a writer for a fucking video game." And he threw that in there.
And as we've established, like the staff that did the localization on this game were not what you would call professional. I mean, I guess they were in the sense they were doing it for a living, and I think they have other credits, but like really it was like people that mostly had real jobs who just kind of did this as like a side thing. Like the guy that plays Alucard, Robbie Belgrade, he's like a musician, and so he had like a bunch of other stuff going on, but he just happened to be living in Japan, so he was just like knew the people working on this, and they hired him on to do the game, and that's how he got this job.
I picture this too, where it's like, this kind of shit was a lot of this kind of shit happened around this time, where it was like, unless you were like, I mean, like Square Enix didn't do it because they didn't have voice acting. So it wasn't like, this was like a new territory and they didn't want to spend a lot of money on it. So I just picture them like doing these recordings, and then like they send it to their bosses who are all Japanese that don't speak English, and they listen and go, "Good. Yeah, that's fine. Sure. Yeah. Great. We paid you for it. We assume it's done right."
They just listened like really taciturn, like frowning the whole time. And after it was over, they were like, "Hi."
they stand up and leave.
they bow and leave.
But yeah, so that very much the center, and we will definitely be coming back here many times.
Yes.
There's lots of stuff going on in this area for the whole game.
Yeah.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Quick question.
Sure.
Will there be fast travel later on?
In a manner of speaking, yes.
Okay, good.
It's not,
because I'm like, if I got to walk down this hallway, fucking 50 fucking
don't
times,
worry.
I'm gonna lose my mind.
Yeah.
You will be walking down this hallway a million times,
So
but
you'll
you just won't be walking as far to get to the hallway.
Yes.
You'll see.
Yeah, you'll see.
Okay,
You'll see.
Okay, I'll
You'll
see.
see. It is a very of the time way of fast travel.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
It's fast travel with limitations.
Okay.
But I did. Let me jump back a little bit because I just want to summarize what happens when we meet Maria. So we know Maria because we played or watched a video of Rondo of Blood, where she's only 12 in that game and friends with Richter. But Alucard has never met her before because he's been asleep for 300 years since the events of Castlevania 3. So this is the first meeting of Alucard and Maria Renard. And so she doesn't trust him, basically, is the gist of this. And he's all quiet. He has trust issues because he's a Vampire, half man, half vampire, bastard son of Dracula.
All sex.
But yes, that canonically, yes, he is all sex. But okay, so they're like not quite trusting each other, but they seem a little bit, they're intrigued by one another. They're curious what's going on here. But she fucks off, and so that she's on her own adventure. We're going to meet up with her again later on, believe it or not, and perhaps she will become an ally. We'll see. But Alucard is still on his own for now. All right. Well, enough about the damn clock. We'll be back here many times, so you'll get to hear about it much more. But that is the infamous clock room. Moving on from there, following the critical path through the stage. We go through a few more windy corridors, and we see a few mysterious, I don't know, what are these, like grates or like coverings in the floor?
Trapdoors or something?
Yeah. There's like, if I can find it on my map here, I'll show you gentlemen what it looks like. But for the listeners at home, as you're making your way past like haunted tables and shit like that, you eventually run into... what the fuck?
I would call them mysteriously differently colored stone blocks in the floor. A mouthful, but that's a very descriptive way of what we're looking at. Way to describe what we're looking at.
Yeah,
so everything is marble and very regal and fancy, white marble, and then all of a sudden there's like a curiously like almost like shiny red, like white. Imagine like if someone had like marble made out of liquid and they were like going to pour it to harden into regular marble and they spilled a bunch of Kool-Aid in it.
It's almost like fleshy colored, like like salmon, or like something you'd see in Doom.
It's like a rose colored set of shiny D&D dice. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, they're like marbled in that way. Yep.
Yeah. Like slightly shiny, like it's got shiny inside of it.
It looks like a hard candy, like it would be yummy to eat.
Yeah, or like some kind of like ribbon candy. Looks like ribbon candy, that shimmering ribbon candy, but it's all like rose and like deep, from like white to rose to deep dark red, all mixed together. And there is a very clear seam between the pieces.
And
they're interlocking. There's two or three of them. Yeah, there's 2 or 3 of them throughout the level, aren't there?
There's 2, yeah. So there's one that we were just looking at, and then there's another a little bit further on. There's 2. And then also in this area, we see yet again a mysterious door with a blue glow around it.
Magically sealed.
Mm-hmm. So that's the second one of those blue doors we've seen. And I'll admit, I actually forgot that this particular blue door was here for quite a while on my latest playthrough. So I got a little bit confused about where I was supposed to go next. I figured it out eventually. But anyway, the point is, listeners at home, remember there's a blue door here.
Yeah, when it becomes relevant in 5 months, remember that it's there.
Exactly.
You're lucky, Aaron, you didn't play this as a kid with no real, I wouldn't say before the internet, but no real understanding or easy way to like access the information we have on this game, because you would not remember that door, and you would spend hours running in circles thinking, why is this game so dumb? I hate this game. And then you finally find it, and you're not even mad. You're like, fuck yeah, I get to play more Castlevania finally, until you get to the next place where you gotta find another door.
I I played through, I haven't played through a lot of Metroidvania type, Castlevania type games or anything. But I played through Hollow Knight, and I did my damnedest not to look up anything. So I did a lot of running around in that game, being like, where the fuck am I supposed to go next? Where the fuck am I supposed to go next? Where the fuck am I supposed to go next?
Yeah, that game definitely, it's not as obtuse as this game is sometimes, but it definitely rewards like remembering what you've seen, being very observant. And it has a map, and you can use the map, and you can put little pins in the map, but that'll only get you so far, because looking at the map can be confusing. And really, what it tries to train you to do, just like this game, but in a better way, is just like remember where you've been. Make a mental map in your head. And that's a tough skill to master. And like when we were kids, like I definitely didn't understand that, and I would just, as soon as I was in an area, I would totally forget it. Just totally out of my brain, like Entrance Hall, Alchemy Lab, what's that? But like nowadays, I've played a video game or two, and I understand, what the game is asking me to try and do here.
I'm going to do limit of my deductive, Sherlock Holmesian skills of finding stuff in this game when I first played it as a kid was opening my map and finding the cubes that had little edges that weren't filled in. So I go, oh, there's a room next to there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that
was it.
I'm going to do my best. Like, I'm not playing ahead at all. I'm playing this as we go. And I'm going to do my best not to look up stuff, really. Like, after I play through an area, like, just to make sure so I can talk about it. Like, I'm going to look at the thing to be like, oh, what did I miss in here that I should check out just so that I can talk about it. But, like, I'm going to do my best to play through the area and, like, do what I can without looking stuff up, and that's going to be a pain in the fucking ass later on, because week to week it's gonna, like, this is going to stretch out a long time. These game discussions we have stretch out months and months and months, and it's going to be hard to remember what to do.
I've been kind of doing a weird mix where what my routine is to one at a time as well, but I pull up the map for the wiki just to be like, okay, here is my realm. Like, I'm not going outside of this box. Like, this is what I'm going to do. If I go far enough in, I'll turn around and go back and just stay within the level. And I'll play that, and then I won't look at anything, and I'll just do that. But then afterwards I'll look and I'll go back and get it if I miss something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good strategy. Like, in general, that's a good game strategy. Like, after you finish the level, then you can look it up. Then you can look for the things that you missed. But first time through, you got to go in cold. You got to go in blind.
Yeah. You're definitely. It will be frustrating at some points, but it's definitely more fun that way.
Can I admit something? When I was a kid, I went through a phase where I was like so afraid of like missing something in a game that I would like I would make sure that I like read the guide before I played the level, just so that I like knew everything even before I even played it. I would like have the guide open while I was playing the game.
That 100% does not surprise me. Not at all.
That happens still to this day with RPGs for me. If I find out like, oh shit, there's an ultimate weapon. It's like, fuck. Well, this just made this game take 10 times longer because I have to like have the guide open. So one example of that is the Trail of Cold Steel game. They're all the same way, but it's to get the ultimate weapons, you have to buy these books in the towns when you first get there, and some of them are missable. And that's the thing. And then you use them to turn in to like get the final weapon. So it's like I'm playing the game with my shitty phone that can't stay on for more than like an hour, trying to go through and it's like, is this where it was at? Is this the one? I want to make sure I get it. I get it, and then I see, okay, next checkpoint here. So then I can play the game like normally for like an hour or two until it's like, this is the chapter. Like, all right, I gotta bring my phone out, make sure I get that goddamn book so I can get the weapon that I'm going to use for like 2 fights, and then the game will be over.
There's certain games like that where you just you know that they're going to fuck you over. Like Fire Emblem games are that way. Like, oh, there's a character you can recruit in this map, but the only way to recruit them is to have a certain other character that you would never use otherwise because they completely suck. You have to make that character talk to this character, and then he'll join you, but otherwise he'll never join you. And it's like, you would never do that. You would just never do that unless you knew to do that already.
And I feel like the reason I'm like that is like non-direct, like it's not even bullying, but like you play the game, right? And as a kid, and then you go talk to your friends about it, and they're like, blah, 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 this and that. And then like, whoa, wait a minute. Fuck, Knights of the what now? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And you're like, fuck, what the fuck? I missed like half the goddamn game.
This lizard didn't even get the gold chocobo.
That happens enough times that you're like, fuck, I don't want to miss out on that. And then you're like, you're shitting on the toilet reading the guide, even when you're not playing the fucking game.
Yep. That upsets me so much. I feel so bad for little Sam, man.
No, don't worry, dude. It helped Sam beat so many games because Sam was not beaten. You know what Sam was doing before? He was using fucking Game Sharks, not because he wanted to beat it, because he just didn't. It didn't click in his brain on how to fucking play video games at first, right? I was like, here's what made me stop using Game Sharks. I was playing. I know we're getting way off target.
Don't even realize it.
Lunar 1. All right. Played in that game. I was bad at RPGs. I wouldn't grind. So I just gave my guys max level and like unable to die. Like they were max level and they couldn't die and all this shit. But there's a point where you fight the last boss right before you really fight him and you have to die.
Oh.
But I had saved my game so the codes were in there and could not come out. And so I couldn't beat the game. Because my guys couldn't die. So I was like, man, fuck it. Not worth it. Never. No. So I stopped using my Game Shark after that.
Destroyed by your own hubris. I love it.
Yeah.
Hoisted on his own petard.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was that way when I was a kid. I was just so afraid of missing something or losing, and I wasn't that good at video games. So I just like wanted to, look up the answer and cheat. I especially remember doing that with the original Myst game, because that game is so difficult to beat without like a guide or hints or something. It's fair, but it's very, very difficult. And when I was like, 15 or whatever, I could not figure it out. I just had to buy like the ultimate Prima guidebook and just follow it to the letter, for every single section of that game.
And I did that with like a few of the Final Fantasy games and stuff, but I didn't feel like I enjoyed the hell out of it. Like I was having a blast, just like, okay, I go to this town, pick up this item in this corner, blah, 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 blah. I'm playing the game, having fun. I'd be like, God, why am I even playing the game? I'm just reading about it, But back then, it was definitely like I needed the fucking handicap because I was so shitty at like playing those kinds of games.
There's sometimes where I'll get like really deep into a game that way, and I'll have this moment of clarity where I'm like, am I enjoying this? And sometimes I'm not sure what the answer is. All right, but let's get back to the Marble Gallery. A few more things to say. So we are now, we should talk about this really, really long hallway. This is, in fact, the longest hallway in the entire game. It's a very, very long corridor with all kinds of pillars holding it up, all kinds of statues, windows out into some kind of courtyard where we can see a very large peeping eye floating around and peering in the windows. And I believe that is a reference to Rondo of Blood as well. We never actually fight that enormous peeping eye, although we fight normal-sized peeping eyes later on. But this very, very long corridor is home to a number of enemies, including the Stone Rose, which is described in-game as a mutated plant. Seeds petrify, which I guess the seeds petrify you. I don't know because I murdered them all in 2 seconds with holy water. And then
they do in fact petrify you. I got turned to stone. Oh man, it was real annoying. Got turned to stone, busted out, and as soon as it bust out, another one's like right there going blap, dropping on your
stop time, blah 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 blah. On all of these things.
Yeah, you can cheese it. And like, once I got the Basilard, again, the first time I faced them, I was like,
Yeah.
When I got the Basilard, I was like, jump, stab, it's blowing up, literally exploding.
I've got PTSD from the petrify status effect for a different room. But you get a little taste, Aaron, where it's
just a taste.
I think I know the one Sam's talking about. I do like Aaron said, how these guys literally explode when you kill them. It's a lot of fun.
It is.
They're like, ooh.
Yeah. and also petrify, at least here, is not that dangerous of a status effect. It freezes you in place until you either break out of it by pressing the buttons or get hit. It's not as bad as like in a Final Fantasy game where it's like the worst status effect. But in general, I guess status effects aren't that threatening in this game, although they can be very annoying in certain situations, which we'll talk about when it's
more
relevant.
about what like restricting poison or whatever is fine, but when later on petrify becomes annoying because it restricts your movement and causes problems in that sense.
Yes. And then also in this corridor, Aaron's new waifu, the Diplocephalus, or as he described it when he texted me earlier today, the lady tail guys.
Sexy lady tails. The sexy lady tails.
It's described in game as nauseating two-headed beast. Which is the head? So I think this is where I got screwed up because it's not clear which part is the tail and which part is the face. So I'm not sure if this is a lady tail or if it's a lady body with a monster tail.
Yeah, because you can actually, I was reading about it, like you can only damage it at the monster face, but you can stand on its back apparently,
yeah,
and not get damaged. Yeah, so
it's for smooches.
I would say
it's for giving her smooches.
That the woman is the tail because you can't hurt it unless you smack it in the monster face.
Yeah, it's like to me, it's much more. It's like bait. It's like those kingfishers, like to draw you in with the sexy lady tail. I would be I would be eaten alive,
like an anglerfish.
Yeah, that's it. Like that's to me that's what's going on here. It's all a draw to get you in. Although that's where the fire comes from. So I don't know.
Are its toes? Are they like tubular or just like big black toenails?
I'm going to say toenails, but they do look kind of tubular if you
look to me. If you look at its like ankles, like above that, and then in the background, like the thumbs, I guess that would come up. They also look it all looks tubular. I always thought it was tubular to me, which made it really disturbing for some reason. Like that's just weird. Like big floppy tube fingers. Like what the fuck? That's just like so like disturbing to me.
It's like that fear of weird holes, like that fear people get of honeycombs and shit like that. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but.
Fear of weird holes.
No, it's a thing. It's a real thing. I can't remember what it's called. I can look it up, but no, it is unsettling to think that that's like a gaping hole at the end of its finger, like
just like a big kind of like floppy hole.
Like a sea sponge or something.
Yeah, it's
very strange.
This enemy, Sam, this kind of reminds me in a way of from Dark Souls 3 when you fight Aldrich, Saint Aldrich of the Deep, and he's this big mass, but then he's got like on his head or his tail, he's got Gwendolyn from the first game just like sticking up.
He's halfway eaten her corpse and is like using it to fight you.
Yes.
It's so fucked up.
It's so weird, man. Yeah.
It's a very Dark Souls enemy. Yeah, you're right.
I was watching a speedrun of that game one time, and they were like, the best way to defeat him is to hit him right in the Gwendolyn.
Trypophobia, just so you guys know. Trypophobia.
Okay. That's
aversion to the sight of
holes.
irregular patterns or clusters of small holes or bumps.
Man, that is a really specific fear.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing, though. It's a thing.
It's real. It's on the internet. Aaron just read it.
If everything I've seen on the internet is real, then I tell you what, the world would be a strange place.
I like how it seems that like all the I'm reading these like immunities and strengths, like clearly they only had 3 spots for like, because like strong versus dark was DRK, and fire is FIR. But they, instead of like WTR for water, they just put H2O.
Yeah, H2O. I love it. The chemical name.
It's funny. It's funny.
Yeah. And we should say that it tells you what items they drop. So far, there hasn't been anything too interesting. This guy drops the pentagram and the tart item. I think for pretty much all enemies, there's a normal common item and then an uncommon drop. And I'm not sure if the percentages are the same for all enemies in the game for their 2 drops or if they're different. I'm guessing it's probably different. I think some are pretty rare, like 1 in 250 and stuff like that.
Because there's some of them are like weapons and stuff. I don't remember what I was grinding before, but I remember I did a playthrough where I was trying to get like the best stuff in the game. And I remember like having to grind out, maybe it was money, but I remember like fighting the same enemy over and over and over, like for something in the game. I can't remember what it was anymore.
There's a few items much later. There's a few items that are very much worth grinding out. So we'll talk about that when it becomes relevant. And I believe that your luck stat could possibly influence what drops, but it's been a while since I looked up what the stats actually do.
I believe that I think luck is related to item drops. Or something like that, yeah.
Okay, we're about done with the Marble Gallery, but there's one last thing I wanted to mention. There aren't a lot of brand new items in this area, just laying around, that is. I mean, you might get some drops and things like that. Weapons, I don't think we've gotten any notable weapons in this area or pieces of armor, at least not yet. But there is a relic. So if you take the long detour down through all the stained glass windows through this big vertical room, there's some items you can't get to because you can't jump high enough to get them. They're just kind of teasing you. But all the way at the bottom, you can get the, what is it, the fairy orb?
Spirit orb?
Yeah, the spirit orb.
Yep.
And what that does is it shows enemy damage values. So it shows you know how much damage you're doing when you hit the enemies now.
Which is interesting. Not particular. I mean, like, I guess it could be particularly useful when you factor into weaknesses and stuff, but we haven't really gotten to that where a ton where that's really a factor. But
for me, there's two parts to it. It makes it a lot easier. You no longer have to like look at your fucking stats. You equip the cool weapon you just found. You hit something. If the number bigger, keep. But also, it is very satisfying when you throw like a holy water or something, and it's like, it's like a million numbers flash up. Who cares what the number is? You just see it a bunch, and it's like, fuck yeah, I'm fucking shit up.
Yep,
that's like that dopamine gets released, baby, floods you.
Yeah, it's like hitting like just the lowest possible score on a slot machine. Like it's like 3 cherries or whatever. It's not worth that much, but seeing all the lights light up is just so satisfying.
Yeah. It's also a very like RPG kind of element that was like a big twist on this kind of genre at the time, seeing your damage numbers. Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, that's true, because Metroid didn't have no damage values.
I don't think any of these games really did stuff like that.
Yeah.
Before this one.
Nowadays, this would just be a built-in feature. You wouldn't have to like find a relic and equip it to make that happen. But I think it's interesting how this game is like, it's so bare bones at first. You can't see enemy names. There's no items dropping from the candles. You're not seeing damage values. You have to collect these relics to make all that happen. So it's kind of neat.
I love that you can turn them on and off.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a cool, like, I'm just going to throw this out there for people. You can do it if you want. You don't have to, but like, don't want the numbers? Make it like old school. Turn it off. You're good to go.
At first I was like, it kind of gave me pause that it was like that, because I was like, is there a penalty for me having this stuff on? Like, it was like, it made me feel like it was using a cheat code of some kind, but like the points, I won't get as much experience or something, but didn't seem to be. So I was like, cool. Rock and roll.
Yeah, just customization for customization's sake.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that Super Metroid had that too. You can turn off your beams and your weapons if you want. You pretty much would never want to do that, but there might be certain situations where, you might want to modify your movement by fucking around with your loadout a little bit. There's certain relics later that you might not want to have on all the time. But yeah, like Sam was saying, it's just like, they just threw it in just because you can tell this game's a labor of love when they just put in stuff like that just to do it, just for no real reason, but because they felt like it.
Labor of love and profit.
Yeah. Well, not at first. This game was not a big hit when it first came out. But later on, it kind of picked up steam, and, it was a slow burn, kind of came from behind a little bit. But not when it first came out.
Can we talk real quick about those statues that are like thrusting their hips at each other? Like,
sure.
No, they're back towards. They're down the long hallway, I think.
Oh, okay. Let me.
I think there's just like here. 2 statues that are like they're separated by a thing in the middle, and they're just like their hips are just like
the red angels with the $450 gold bag.
Yeah.
You're right here. Keep going. There.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
They're like, look at my crutch. Look at
my crotch.
Pelvic thrusting contest.
Every time I saw them, I'm like, hey guys, how's it going?
Such a weird thing. This thing is, it's so weird. It's like, we're gonna just put a big bag of money, and it's gonna have a special sprite that's specifically for that, with 2, like the candles have different flames, and like a special like crotch statues just for a big bag of money.
Yeah, for no other reason than because
just
they felt
like
like
money.
it.
Yeah.
They were like I said, they did this game for profit. They're expressing their feelings. Like, we want to fuck this bag of money right here. We love it so much. We want to just get down and make babies with it.
So this is a Freudian thing, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
But then why do they give the money to us, the player?
The game developer's mother, and they want to fuck it.
Oh my God. I guess that fits with Freud.
That's why I said the joke. Yes.
It had the cadence of a joke. All right. Well, I guess that's going to about do it for the Marble Gallery.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Do you guys have anything else to add before we wrap that one up?
I'm annoyed that there wasn't a single statue you could smash.
Yeah.
Not a single one.
Nope.
I want to point out the picture in my background. I don't know the name of these guys, but they were giving me some PTSD, more Doom PTSD for Lost Souls, because they were almost as annoying to deal with. But if you just kind of run and hit the right timing, you got just
Aren't they just ghosts? Yeah, they're just ghosts.
Yeah, ghosts.
Just ghosts. Okay.
Yeah.
The infinite ghosts.
Very much reminds me of Lost Souls.
Yeah, I quickly did what I fought them for a little while, and then I was like, oh, they're just going on forever and ever and ever. And I just ran.
You just gotta run through.
I'm not gonna mess around. This is just no thanks.
Yeah, very.
But that is my theme. I'm going to be posting my favorite enemies, or notable enemies from each level, for my background.
All right, I can't wait to see what's coming up next on Sam's Notable Enemies Watch. All right.
Last time we didn't talk about them, but the what are they called? The guys that hang from the ceiling and drop poison tears.
Oh, Spittlebone.
Spittlebones. Yeah, that was my background for Alchemy Lab.
Yeah, those guys suck. All right. Or they spit, I suppose. But how are we doing on time there, Aaron? Do we should we wrap this one up, or do we have time for some other stuff?
We could probably do, as long as we don't take too long, let's do some other stuff.
All right. I thought this would be a good point. Since this is kind of like a Nexus area, just sort of like there's no boss, not a lot going on here, just sort of, big, wide open area, moving from one thing to the next. I thought this would be a good time to take a little break, to pause and reflect on the man who inspired all of this madness. And I'm, of course, talking about Vlad the Impaler. Vlad Dracula himself, the man for which this game is named, sort of, and so much other of our cultural lore as a society comes from this particular gentleman.
Is it me, or does he kind of look like a Muppet in this picture? It's like a little bit.
Yeah,
something like similar. Like you look at this guy and you don't think that he's the kind who would impale people on spikes. He seems like a cool, chill dude, but I get the Muppet vibes. I totally see it.
I think it's the fact that he has no upper lip in the picture that makes me think he's a Muppet.
He's got that like Grover lower lip too. Like it's
He's the monster at the end of the book.
He is.
I feel like he could put his lower lip over his nose.
Yeah.
And he's just got like fur. It's just fur. He's like a furry monster. Like that hair coming down.
We're looking at this. We're looking at the picture of Vlad the Impaler, like the only picture of him. It's like this famous painting from like the 1600s that's supposedly based on an image that was made during his own lifetime. But this is what the man looks like, and it's in Castlevania. There's a certain item called Power of Sire that when you use it, this portrait pops up on screen, which is kind of cool. But we'll see that at some point. But yeah, he doesn't look that threatening. He's got like this long black hair that's all curly, and he's got this really thick caterpillar mustache going across the top of his face.
And just such a fun hat. And look at the big, he's got the big buttons on his coat.
You know what? Santa Claus. A goofy. No, here's what it is. He's totally like the cool, funny uncle, because like he doesn't have a mustache in this picture. If you look at it, it's the same curliness as his hair. He's just put it over his nose, under his nose, and he's holding it up with his lip, and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna take a funny picture for the kids."
Hey, it's me, Uncle Vlad of Wallachia.
You don't like my picture? Oh, that's okay. Stake 'em.
What? That village of Saxons didn't like my picture? Impale all of them.
Yeah, this is him realizing that no one's laughing at the joke, and he's about to have his Joker moment of impaling everyone in Transylvania.
He's taking the clown pill. He's getting Joker-fied. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this guy's biography. Do you guys know anything about Vlad III?
Just that he was like, no.
Okay. Well, I've got his Wikipedia article pulled up here, and as we all know, Wikipedia is 100% accurate and should not be questioned. So Vlad III was the son of Vlad II, also known as Vlad Dracul, and he was called Vlad Dracul because he was a member of the Order of the Dragon, which is one of those medieval orders, you know, like the Knights Templar and shits like that, you know, had all this like ceremony and mysticism, but it was kind of an important like qualification. But Vlad III, as the son of Vlad Dracul, took the cognomen Vlad Dracula, which means son of the dragon. So his dad was a member of the Order of the Dragon, and he in honor of his father, was known as son of the dragon. But his dad was ruler of Wallachia, a province in, you know, the what do you call that region of the world? The Eastern Europe, I guess.
Yeah.
It's part of Romania now, but this was in the 1400s. And his family were called the Voivodes, which a voivode was like, it's a title and it means warlord or something like that. But it's essentially like a duke or a prince. So they were the Voivodes of Wallachia. But his dad and older brother were murdered at some point by some other fucking guy. I mean, this story is insane. It's just warlords backstabbing and killing each other constantly. And of course he was pissed about that. You know, his birthright was taken from him. So he bounced around in like other countries for a while. He was a hostage in the Ottoman Empire when he was a kid. And eventually he got away and invaded Wallachia and took over for like a month before he was kicked out again, and, you know, bounced around a little bit, you know, was in Hungary for a while. Finally, he came back and took over in 1456, and then he ruled until 1462. When he was deposed again. And then eventually he came back in 1476 and ruled for like another few months before he was finally killed. But that second period from 1456 to 1462 is the famous one, and when he accomplished all of his very cool actions that we will talk about. But yeah, this is Vlad the Impaler. Just a really cool guy, if you ask me.
Seems like kind of a big baby, if you ask me. Like, oh no, my family was killed and I was deposed. Wah!
Let's see. Yeah, so he was kind of whiny about that. But when he got back into power, like, you know, his experience as a kid, like seeing his father and brother killed, seeing all this upheaval, you know, people always invading, like the Ottomans and the Hungarians always wanted a piece of Wallachia. And so when he finally got into power, he decided that he wasn't going to fuck around. So like he told the Sultan and the King of Hungary that they could blow him, and just started fucking going ham. Like any village, mostly villages of Saxons that you know, fucked around and like, you know, acted in any way like hostile to him, he would march in and just have the whole village executed. And his favorite thing to do was to impale them, so that everyone that, you know, came within 100 feet would see what had happened to all of these people. I've got some primary sources here, courtesy Wikipedia. Let's see. There's you know, he was always at odds with like the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire and Matthias Corvinus, the King of Hungary at the time. And both of them wrote a lot about the insane things that Vlad did when he was in charge. But one of my favorite ones is this is from a guy named Basarab Lyota, who was an enemy of Vlad, and I think eventually killed him. But he writes in a letter that, you know, during some of these conflicts, that...
Why are we talking about Matthias Corvinus? I'm sorry. I never heard this.
We're recording a podcast. We're talking about Vlad the Impaler.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just like, that's my favorite king of Hungary.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Okay.
Does Sarah does she want to come in and tell us tell us the story?
And tell us about Matthias Corvinus.
In undergrad, I wrote a paper about his manuscript workshop.
Oh, okay.
I don't blame her. You hear someone talking about someone you've wrote a paper on. You probably don't get a lot of chances to talk about it in a social situation. It's like, I got my chance.
So she doesn't want to hop on and say hello and tell us all about
Matthias Corvinus.
That guy.
She declined. She respectfully declined.
Do you want somebody say Matthias Corvinus?
Are you guys talking about Matthias Corvinus in here?
That's a strange coincidence, though. I never would have. Who would have thunk it? Also, I think Matthias Corvinus is a character in those Underworld movies. I don't know.
Oh, really?
I don't know if you guys ever saw those, but I think eventually it turns out that like Matthias Corvinus is like the ancient king of the vampires who's like been alive all this time somehow. I'm pretty sure. But
he's a vampire. He's a vampire. They stay around.
All right. But anyway, okay. So this is a letter from Basarab Leota. And not Ray Liotta, Basarab Liotta. But anyway, he says, speaking of Vlad, he captured all the merchants of Brasov and Tarabarse who had gone in peace to Wallachia and took all their wealth. But he was not satisfied only with the wealth of these people, but he imprisoned them and impaled them, 41 in all. Nor were these people enough. He became even more evil and gathered 300 boys from Brasov and Tarabarse that he found in Wallachia. Of these he impaled some and burned others.
Damn, that's fucking hardcore, man.
Yeah. He didn't screw around. I mean, this was how he dealt with people. I mean, it was very, very harsh. And apparently he was like that because of his experiences, like as a kid and just knowing the kind of turmoil that Wallachia had been going through. And so he wanted to ensure peace at any cost.
Well, what's the meme? Men will literally impale 41 villagers and then get 300 boys and impale and burn them rather than go to therapy.
Dude, that's so true. Vlad,
isn't it?
Vlad did not need therapy. Let's just be clear.
He didn't.
He got his shit sorted out. He knew what he needed to do.
Yep.
He had a goal. He had his vision board and he made it realized.
Like, no, I think impaling really works for me.
He was proof that therapy is bullshit.
You just need some villagers to massacre. It's all any man needs.
So later he got into a little bit of a tiff with the Sultan of the Ottomans. He murdered some of the envoys that the Ottoman Sultan had sent to him, like, demanding that he go and kneel before him and, blah, 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 all that normal stuff. Vlad told him to fuck off. So, that bit him in the ass. The Ottomans invaded. And they during this whole incident, a Greek historian, and Greek is an insane language, but his name is something like Launikos Chalkokondyles. He wrote this little missive. The Sultan's army entered into the area of the impalements, which was 17 stades long and 17 stades wide. There were large stakes on which, as it was said, about 20,000 men, women, and children had been spitted. Quite a sight for the Turks and the Sultan himself. The Sultan was seized with amazement and said that it was not possible to deprive of his country a man who had done such great deeds, who had such a diabolical understanding of how to govern his realm and its people. And he said that a man who had done such things was worth much. The rest of the Turks were dumbfounded when they saw the multitude of men on the stakes. There were infants, too, affixed to their mothers on the stakes, and birds had made their nests in their entrails.
So he was stake stacking, It wasn't just one per stake. It was like, we're making a fucking people kebabs.
We're going to get our money's worth out of these stakes. So he was a hell of a guy. I mean, just a very tight, very cool guy who did a lot of cool things.
Someone to aspire to, really.
Yeah.
Like, this was a man who overcame extreme adversity and made the hell of a comeback, and then lost it all again, then made another hell of a comeback, and then
from such highs to such lows.
His friends all thought he was cool.
Eventually, all of his chicanery bit him in the ass. The Ottomans propped up his younger brother Radu and ended up deposing him. So he ended up being imprisoned in Hungary for a while by Matthias Corvinus. And apparently it was a situation where like Corvinus was like a very powerful man in the region and was like, Jesus Christ, like what are we going to do? These people in Wallachia are just going buck wild. And I guess he figured like the easiest solution was to just have Vlad imprisoned. And he wasn't like in a dungeon, you know, but he was forced to remain in Hungary for quite a while.
White collar exile.
Yeah, exactly. Eventually they let him go. Apparently he converted to Catholicism, according to some stories, which, you know, that might have been just like a symbolic thing. And, you know, in his heart, he was probably still fucking evil and loving it. But, you know,
yeah, believe it or not, being Catholic doesn't preclude you from being an evil bastard. It's a shocker. I know.
Yeah, I never knew that. But eventually he did, he was let go by Corvinus and, you know, managed to gather an army, returned to Wallachia again. And he was battling against, God, I forget one of the, I mean, there's so many characters in this story. They come and go a lot, but I think it was, Basarab, but eventually, he managed to like get control of the region for like, I don't know, like a month. And then, you know, after that, he was defeated and killed in battle. So that was it. Supposedly the Ottomans, after they defeated him, cut his corpse into pieces, and that his head was sent to the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, Mehmed II. So that was the end. You know, pretty short career, all things considered. And he was really not the ruler for that long of a time. Most of his time was spent in exile, but
I love that he had a bunch of itty bitty short little rules. Like,
yeah,
he came into power for a month. It didn't last very long, but
yeah,
like, and they kept not killing him.
yeah, he just kept getting away with it.
Yeah, what the fuck?
They were like, Vlad, we like you, but you got to cool it, man. You got to be in exile for a little while. No, I will not be in exile. I must return to Wallachia.
I imagine like he's got to be like super. He's got to be like super. He had to have been like super chill to everybody. Like when he wasn't like putting on spikes, he just be like, "Hey, come on, buddy, come on." That was just a goof, right?
Come on, you know me.
And I put the people on the spikes as a joke.
It was just a goof. They took it out of context.
It's high art. You just don't understand. It's okay, buddy. It's all right. Come on, let's go have a drink.
In Wallachia, is very good joke.
Like seriously, he had to have been, right? Nobody wanted to just fucking kill this guy.
Yeah.
Like he's like, I can't stay mad at you, Vlad.
The Sultan was impressed when he saw those 20,000 corpses on stakes.
It's like, this guy really has his shit together.
What's his face?
Sultan.
Albert Brooks or whatever from not Albert Brooks, the other guy from Troy, when he's like pointing life, he's like, look at that. Check that out.
He was
like, that's something you don't see every day.
Only a really cool guy could have done this. Here's another funny one. According to a historian named Antonio Bonfini, he wrote that Turkish messengers came to Vlad to pay respects, but refused to take off their turbans according to their ancient custom. Whereupon he strengthened their custom by nailing their turbans to their heads with 3 spikes so that they could not take them off.
Wow, dude. That's being a bad host.
No,
they were
man,
bad guests. They should have taken their turbans off.
He was just not, he wanted to respect their customs. Like, man, what if like it's windy here, man, it's windy in this castle.
Yeah.
Make sure that they don't blow off. We didn't have, staples or anything like that. They had to use railroad spikes, I guess.
That's what he was saying to them the whole time. They go back, they're like, I think it's just a misunderstanding. He's a nice guy. He just didn't understand why we had our turbans on.
Hey, you don't know Vlad like we do. He's a really cool dude. You should see Vlad after a night of drinking.
He just loves sticking sticking hard, pointy metal things through people. It's a thing of his. We get it. We get it.
We learned the hard way to hide the head spikes when he's been drinking.
Oh shit. Now his cruelty inspired many stories. The Germans and the Slavs wrote all these stories about him. A lot of them get exaggerated to the point that they're just insane, like, chopping up babies and stuff like that. Like, saying he was worse than Caligula. And it's like, who knows how true any of that is. It probably got exaggerated. In Romania, he's regarded as a national hero by a lot of people. It's just like kind of how Genghis Khan is the national hero of Mongolia. Any country loves their own war criminals. Just look at America.
He's an asshole, but he's our asshole.
Yeah. He's, his legacy is kind of one of, they think about like he did a lot of cruel things, but he did it for, like pragmatic purposes to restore peace and order in a time that there was lots of upheaval. I'm not saying I endorse that point of view, but that's what certain Romanians think.
Don't think it was very effective. Like, it didn't go so well, really.
He got.
He got, yeah. I mean, he got a lot of others, but he got too. Like, and it clearly there was still a lot of upheaval and unrest and shit. Like, not. I think that he needed a different strategy.
Yeah,
a little more care, a little less stick.
Well, and some of his letters survive, and in his letters, he doesn't sound like an insane person. Like, he sounds sort of pragmatic, like. He writes about, people, saying they want to be friends with him. And he's like, how can I be friends with you if you could like come and kill me? You killed my father, you killed my brother. How can I trust you? So he's basically saying, I have to act this way because you guys made me. You made me do it. Look what you made me do.
I mean, that's... Yeah, that sounds sure, that makes some sense, but when you're like the king, like you can't just spit in the eye of everybody's the neighbor. Like, you got to make peace at some point, right? I don't know.
I gotta think that
there's a lot of crazy motherfuckers, and he's like, I need to be crazier than them, so they'll be afraid of
prison
me.
rules,
and then I'll be in charge, and I'll get all this shit together.
Yeah, exactly.
Baby spikes.
Yes, baby spikes. And you got to think that like you were saying, Aaron, like Matthias Corvinus would just like kept defending him. He was like, no, Vlad's a cool guy. I love him. You don't know Vlad like I do. He's really a nice guy.
Once you get to know him, you'll understand his humor better.
You just take off your hat. That's all we ask. Just take your hat off.
Just word advice. Take your fucking hat off.
He's like in the corner, like staking a dinner roll onto his knife and just like looking at them with like a huge bug-eyed glare.
He's just like, he's got like his tongue out, like, when people like are working hard on something, but he's putting like bits of all of his meals onto his knife. So it's like the steak and then some vegetables and then the bread. And like, he's a really great guy. And he looks up at him and then looks back down and keeps stacking it on there.
So there are no there's one extant image of him, that painting that we looked at earlier. A few people wrote descriptions of him, basically following the painting, saying that he had bushy hair, that he had an aquiline nose, a cold and terrible appearance. They talk about him having that big mustache, but that his chin and cheeks were shaved. So a very striking appearance. As for the vampire mythology, there's no basis at all in history for that. Bram Stoker just made it up. He kind of just took various disparate elements of Eastern European mythology and just put it all together, with no regard for historical accuracy. So that's where that comes from. Because Vlad was cruel and he did impale people, but there was definitely no allegations of him drinking blood or anything like that, or not credible ones anyway.
Sure, but like when Bram was like, we'll just connect these dots, everyone was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the time in England, when the book was published, people probably had no fucking idea who Vlad the Third was.
Yeah, and most people these days probably don't realize that Dracula was based on a real person.
He was a real dude.
Pop culture Dracula. Anyways,
probably what happened is like Bram Stoker like took elements of like other legends, like Elizabeth de Bathory, the famous like countess lady who like murdered like 200 young girls and would like bathe in their blood and shit like that. And just kind of combined a lot of fun stuff together.
Now I want to see a popular movie about that. Why doesn't Blade fight her?
I'm surprised they haven't done it. And characters based on her show up in the Castlevania franchise from time to time. And definitely in that new Bloodstained game, there's a character that's like almost explicitly Elizabeth de Bathory.
She's not one of the new vampires in the Castlevania show, is she? One of those three or one of those four or so?
Oh, no, but
okay,
you can kind of draw some parallels there. Carmilla's the main one, and Carmilla's a character who I think there's like some mythology around her, and she shows up in the Castlevania franchise a lot also.
I really like all those characters, and I'm excited for the story to continue. I haven't heard anything about season 4, but
no,
yeah,
I guess they're making
cool.
it because 3 ended on a cliffhanger. It was super fucking tight though.
Yeah, Netflix is notorious for canceling their shows after 3 seasons, though. So
yeah,
no matter how much people want, they'll just do it.
Yeah, they're very pragmatic. I don't get it because Netflix has never made any money ever, so I don't understand like what their model is, or what they're hoping to accomplish. Like they have this algorithm that they're totally beholden to that tells them when to cancel shows, but it doesn't seem like they're making a profit.
Probably has something to do with how many new subscribers the new shows pull in. And then once subscriptions level off, they'll just like, fuck it, pull it out. No point. It's not bringing any people in. Other stuff will keep people here now that they're here. It's probably something along those lines, I bet.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Maybe. I'm still just pissed about Glow. That's it. I'm just pissed about Glow.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
It's such a fucking bummer. So frustrating.
I want another season of the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance.
That ain't happening. It's not happening, unfortunately. I enjoyed that first season, but
yeah, well, neither is Glow. So there.
I know. Well, no, I'm like, I feel like there's still like a sliver of hope that Glow like gets some movie or something, but like Dark Crystal, apparently Netflix was like, it did not get, the views, and it cost way too much money. It was cool though. I wish that they did continue.
It's a great show. Yeah, it's very, very good. And I obviously that was never going to be a hit. I mean, whoever signed off on that should have been fired immediately, but,
thank God they did,
super tight.
Super tight. We should probably wrap it up there.
I suppose we should. So that's the story, the wild and weird story of Vlad the Impaler, known as Vlad Tepes or Vlad Dracula, the inspiration for this game in many ways. And that's also it for the Marble Gallery. We're done, and we're moving on to a new area, the Outer Wall. So you guys can look forward to that in a week's time. But in the meantime, Sam, do you have any words of wisdom for our listeners?
Read Hellsing, because especially if you're want some vampire stuff. And just because it made me think of it, you guys were talking about 3 seasons getting canceled. There was a show on Netflix. It was 3 seasons, and it was final season, so they didn't have to cancel it. But it's a show called Dark. I've probably mentioned at least once or twice on this podcast. It's a German, it's kind of like a Twin Peaksy kind of show where it's like a small town, lots of secrets, and then there's a really interesting twist that I won't tell you because it's the perfect show where you just have to like watch and figure shit out as you're watching it. But it's German, subtitles, on Netflix, 3 seasons. It's one of the best shows I've seen in a long time. And it's all there. Dark.
There you go. Watch Dark, read Hellsing. All right. And Aaron, what do you want to say to the folks at home?
I want to say thank you, everybody, for listening and or watching. Please go to onestageatatime.com to see more of our episodes and links to all of our things, our socials, and all that. Please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us out. And we'll see you all next week. Thank you, Andy and Sam, for doing this with me. Everybody, please save and continue.